Welcome everyone. We're here to have a nice discussion on electric motorcycles. So we today have Gideon Schipaanboord, who's head of marketing from RGNT Motorcycles, and I myself are from Telenor Group, and I'm a manager for climate and environment. Today we'll be going through a couple of things, but most prominently we'll be looking at what kind of sustainability challenges RGNT faces and wants to solve, and what is the role of IoT in delivering those aims. So I think if we briefly kind of look at the wider picture of electric motorcycles to begin with, it could be quite useful, as they're not talked about too much in Scandinavia, but the sector is proving to be much faster at adopting the transition to electrified transports, where globally we see 90% of electric vehicles currently operating in the world are 2 or 3 wheelers, and the biggest growth segment of those is in low and middle income countries, but their adoption has also been seen closer to home in Europe, where electric motorcycles have been growing rapidly. So I just wonder whether or not you can tell us, to begin with, Gideon, the story of the beginnings of RGNT and how that came to be and how you started to develop this electric motorcycle.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I would love to. Yeah, just a quick overview of RGNT Motorcycles, how we started. It's about 2 years ago that actually our founder, Jonathan Armstrong, he was in Beijing by that time. And he was actually walking through the city, and he was there at the time that the whole transition from all these electric mopeds was going to continue. So what he actually saw was that the city was changing, well, in the Chinese way of how changes are made. So from one day to the other day, there were all these little hub motorcycles. So all these little hub scooters actually were in the city instead of all the noisy ones that were before. So he was interested in this transition, and he looked at it, and he took one of those hub motors with him to Bali, where he was going afterwards. So he went to that place and he took the hub motor, and then he started to think, like, what can we do with this hub motor, and how can I use that and use it in a way that it's for this whole EV motorcycle, it's interesting to see. So he started to think, and he saw the electric motorcycles coming up as well, and there was a lot of using materials like the cheaper materials and from different countries, and he thought, like, can we make a motorcycle that will last longer, that has this classic look and feel, like this classic, probably the Swedish design, as we could say, that will probably be a nice motorcycle 20 years ago, but still be a beautiful motorcycle the coming 20 years. So that's what he did, and this is where we are right now. Actually, we're very successful, and we're growing fast. There's a lot of traction. And we see that RGNT has been growing in the last years to a serious company, to a serious motorcycle company. And at the same time, we also see that the whole scene, the whole motorcycle scene, is changing as well. And that is something, well, of course, for us, that is something to be very proud and happy about, because we see that people are changing their minds, and motorcycling has always been a very, well, in my opinion, a traditional market, and I've been walking around this motorcycle scene for a long time, and I think that we're sort of 8 years behind, I would say. But nowadays we see a change. We see more people, when we show the bike, when people try the bike, they say, like, yeah, it's interesting, and it's something that is going to be there for sure. Well, 2 years ago, people were negative, and they were like, oh yeah, we need those loud pipes, save lives, and this is what a motorcycle is about. We need that experience. But it's changing rapidly. So people start to understand that this change that has already been made in cars and scooters and everywhere is also a change for motorcycling instead as well. And I think yesterday, I think it's because of our webinar, Alastair, that I understood that Ferrari even is going to make an electric car. So it's probably something, it's changing, the world is changing, the people are changing, and also the mindset of people is definitely changing. So this is a
really interesting
background.
Yeah, it's a really nice background, and I think just before we go any further, I just want to say if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please post them in the question module or just in the chat, and we'll make sure that we get to them. But that's a really nice story, Gideon, and this is kind of what you're really taking is what you said is a traditional kind of petrol head market. And adapting what you're seeing in kind of very fast growing Asian markets where perhaps that is aimed at cheaper, more accessible, more disposable electric two-wheelers into something that is addressing kind of both sides of moving towards electrified transportation while simultaneously making something that's really attractive and can work with the current motorbike market that exists. So I think that's that's a really nice kind of background story. But what's the kind of larger sustainability aims of Region? What are you trying to address? So why EV? Why is that important? Why make it in with locally sourced materials? And yeah, what's the real aim behind that?
Yeah, I think we, from the beginning, our founder, and that's also something that we have, I think, in the DNA of the company, is that we really want to accelerate the world into a sustainable society. And everything that we do, we always try to think in that kind of way, like how can we support this sustainable society? So if we are talking about the product itself, how we source our products, what we do inside the factory, how we make our choices, there's always, in our opinion, this sustainable world is something that is very important for us. So if we're not only looking at the product, but also from a broader perspective, I think that we have to think differently. We have to change our paradigm. Of course, there's a lot of things going on in the world, especially also when we look at the way of thinking about, for example, how we use public transportation, how we make sure that we are talking, if we are talking about urban commuting, how can we change that in something else? And I think that we as Regent, we want to play a part of that. We want to be proud and at least that we can say like, hey, we've done our part, what we think is helping people to make sure that we are contributing to a sustainable world in the end.
It's very good, and I think as well. I mean, I think those are really important aims, but I'm going to be cynical here, and I'm going to say, are there driving forces? We see certain restrictions coming in, particularly in urban areas. Is this actually just a really savvy business decision?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that one of the things we opened our showroom, our first showroom was we opened in Paris this spring, and that was actually the reason why we choose for Paris. On one side, it was about the lifestyle, and of course, I think that the product fits very well into the Parisian lifestyle. But on the other side, there's also something happening in those big cities, and it's Paris, it's Munich, and those kind of cities are way ahead. And they, for example, say like, hey, if you come in with your old two-stroke motorcycle, you're not allowed to park anymore. And that's the first step that actually has been taken, and they are promoting this whole EV motorcycle scene in so many ways. So we see that it's more adapting, and also the cities, they ask for our kind of products. It's more and more becoming a regular thing to make sure that you can still be urban commuting in your kind of way if you have an EV motorcycle or an EV car.
So now I want to ask you about IoT and our side of your story, and so I want to know how our services from Telenor, how did they help you achieve your sustainability aims? What does it do in the bike, and then how does that then work?
Yeah, well, I think for in case of talking about IoT and specific Telenor, of course, I think there are two main topics, and the first one is safety. That is something that Telenor and IoT, of course, take a huge role in the whole development and how we think about how we can make our motorcycle more safe for the driver, of course. So, for example, we are talking about ABS. We're talking about active safety, which is all on our roadmap for the coming months. So, for example, like if you get warnings and there's an alert system, if something is going wrong ahead of you, then we are the first ones that give you these warnings. So that's kind of things. That is very important for us if we're talking about IoT and safety. And on the other side, it's also about on the product side. So if you're looking at our motorcycles, we try to build a motorcycle that is actually maintenance free, and IoT helps us a lot with that. So for example, we can give our people that actually own a Regent motorcycle, we can give them a warning. For example, if the battery is low, we can actually tell them like, hey, watch out, your battery is going to be low, please recharge, because otherwise it's not a good thing for your battery. So in that kind of way, we can help people to maintain their motorcycle. So we have a direct connection with the owners of the Regent motorcycles. So those are, in my opinion, the two most important how IoT plays a role in our motorcycles. It's about safety and it's about maintenance free.
So is kind of on the maintenance side, apart from the battery management system, is there any other part of the motorcycle that IoT helps to monitor?
Yeah, of course. It's about if there are any issues with the bike, so we can give a diagnosis of issues, and that will be reported to our factory slash headquarter in Sweden, so we can contact people. So it's about maintenance, it's about diagnosis, but it's also about driving behavior. So we can actually see how people use the bike, and we can, in the future, if we want to, we can give them tips like, hey, you can do it better like this, or you can help. It's more sustainable if you use the bike in this kind of way. So we can actually help them driving the motorcycle in an even better way, or in a cheaper way for them. So in all those kind of ways, we can help people with IoT. Now, and then of course we have the navigation, but it's more probably something that we all already expect to have the navigation on the motorcycle. But it's also about, for example, gamification. So it would be great at some point in the future we can connect Regent owners with each other. So for example, I live in Rotterdam, and if somebody wants to visit Rotterdam and he comes with his Regent motorcycle, it would be great if we can connect those people and make sure that those people, well, they can go for a ride, or I can show you the city, etc., etc. But it can also be somebody who is taking the bike and who makes sure that he gets everything out of the battery in a better way than you do, for example. So we can set up challenges. So all those kind of things, I see a lot of possibilities with IoT for us.
So that's, if I'm counting correctly, there's kind of three kind of real key attributes to IoT in helping Regent, reach their sustainability targets. And I wonder whether or not, when we're talking about kind of more efficient riding, more efficient navigation, the better kind of management of the batteries and power system, increasing the longevity of the motorcycle, how do you quantify the environmental impact of that. You know, we have a kind of an immediate story where we say, okay, this isn't a combustion engine. We're not releasing particulate matter. We're not releasing greenhouse gases. But then how do we turn this story into, okay, we have IoT incorporated within within the electric vehicle. What concrete emission reductions does that lead to, and how do we quantify that?
Yeah, I must admit that this is the most difficult question of this morning, because for us it's very hard to quantify, and yeah, there is a lot of discussion, and I do know that there's a lot of different ways of looking at it. For example, I do have like 8 old motorcycles, 2-strokes from the 70s. I still have them in my garage because I just love them and I love to cherish them, and hopefully one day they're in my living room, but I didn't get that. I didn't manage to get that. But in the end, they are just in my garage, and I'm not using them that often. So probably I'm only using them once a year. So is that something that I have to compare with? Is that something that we can measure how to use a motorcycle versus a regular bike? Of course, we see that maintenance, we have a low maintenance motorcycle, so we can almost say like 30,000 kilometers, you only have to change tires and brakes, etc., etc. But there's more to that to make the right calculation and to say like, okay, this is how we measure our sustainable motorcycle. So unfortunately, it's hard to compare it one-to-one directly with a regular motorcycle, but it's definitely something that we are still looking at, like, okay, how can we make sure and guarantee that this motorcycle is well more sustainable, and it's a better for environment urban commuter than a regular motorcycle.
Yeah, I think that's probably quite a nice segue then onto kind of, you know, what is those are the challenges of kind of measuring the impact. Then what are the limits to IoT in delivering kind of environmental benefits within the EV or in EV bikes particularly sector?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. If you ask me about challenges, if we look at IoT and how we measure sustainability for our motorcycles, I think that one of the main challenges that we have right now is that I think that IoT, for example, the development and the changes that are made are really it's a fast how do you say, it's difficult to keep up with the latest technology all the time, and that is something that we see that makes it hard also to measure for us, because for example, if we are working on a new motorcycle, it takes us 2 years before it's actually road legal. So we have to work for a long time to make sure that everything is in line. And the IoT of 2 years ago is not the IoT of today. So to keep up with that and to make sure that we have a bike that is still valid and part of and still available in the current market, that is something that is probably our biggest challenge at the moment with IoT, to keep up with it right now.
Yeah, really interesting, really interesting. And I just want to ask you one more question. I've heard there's always that fact that there are 90% of Rolls-Royce's cars are still on the road, and that gives them the opportunity to boast they are the most sustainable and environmentally friendly car manufacturer. So I think my question is, do you have to be a luxury vehicle manufacturer to be sustainable?
That's an interesting one. I like your comparison. I think by using materials that are like high quality materials, I think by using, as we do, our whole material flow. Everything comes, well, 90% of all the products are from Sweden, and then a few products also from Europe. Using those kind of materials, make sure that we can at least say that we try to make something that is sustainable on the long way. That's for sure. And hopefully our design and everything that comes with that gives you that sustainable feeling, that it's something that yeah, like we started our conversation, that we show you a bike that was actually could have been 20 years ago, like a really cool and nice looking bike, and we believe that hopefully in 20 years it's still that beautiful product. It's probably like, well, you talk about Rolls-Royce, but also the Porsche is a great example of a design that has lasted such a long time and such a beautiful and strong product over years. Yeah.
Indeed. It's yeah. Let's hope perhaps it's more in the longevity lies in the design, perhaps. So,
Definitely. Yeah.
So I think it's my time to thank you very much for coming to this webinar and talking about your fantastic motorcycles that are coming to market and on market. And if you think to everyone, if there are any further questions to either myself or Gideon directly, please contact us on the email addresses that are currently on the slide, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible.
Yeah, I just want to highlight, because we have a, well, of course it's a short presentation, so we couldn't go in depth in all aspects of this meeting. So please also from my side, feel free to share any questions or contact me by email, and I'm more than happy to take a closer look and to have a deep dive about certain topics for sure.
Okay, thanks again.
All right, thank you. Bye, speak soon.